Mr. McCoy has suggested that his interests are in education as well. Would you, while I collect the cards at the tables, would you ask him what bills he's introduced to address this issue?
Well, time's up. Yeah. The number of bills that have been introduced by my opponent have been minimal, and really none of them have dealt with education. I think there's, free to back me up, there's 13 bills that were introduced. None of them have been passed. There were 8 that were written, 4 of them, I believe, without co-sponsors. So we're not really getting a lot of attention in this area. And that's the reason that I want to go to Columbia. There aren't many of us who have a background in education who can leave our jobs and go to Columbia. I don't know how many of you know, but the legislative session is from January to June, and it's Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So how many of you could go to Columbia to serve in that capacity? Not very many. And I think that that is a problem. I think that's why we don't have some of the variability that we need in the legislature. Now you're timing this, George, right?
Would you ask again? One of the questions that I have is you'll represent everybody, but as I recall, Mr. McCoy had a forum. Would you ask him who he had invited to that forum?
Well, maybe I could ask here, how many of you were invited to the forum? Great. I'm glad, Carter, that you were invited, because obviously none of us were invited to those forums. And I think that that's a piece of what I think needs to be addressed, is that we are a new community, newly formed community. We are Kiowa, Seabrook, Folly Beach, and James Island, except for 3 precincts on James Island that have been gerrymandered out of the district, which I'm going to come back to this, but this really bothers me. I want to say this because we took out Precinct 1B, which is the Soul Agree community. We took out Westchester, and then we also took out Riverland Terrace, which is more balanced community. And so I really believe communities need to be kept together. And I think that with us being a newly formed region for District 115, it's very important that we communicate with each other. And I think it's very important that legislators try to reach out to as many people as we can. Now, we're a new District 115. We're about 26,000 voters, and 47% of those people vote. And trying to reach them is a challenge. I mean, you've got to use the media, you have to use emails, you have to use mailings to reach people. Now, the legislators do get $1,000 per month for constituent services, and I would pledge to you that if that was the money allocated to me as a legislator, I would figure out a way to communicate. I mean, I already know that sending out 10,000 postcards costs somewhere around $3,000. So I think that building communication networks with your voters is very, very important. Is that giving you guys enough time to process these questions? Okay. Hope they're not too hard. Okay.
Yeah, I could start with one, and we'll just go from one to the other, if that's all right. This is about vouchers. This says your opponent has taken 10,000 for vouchers. I don't know what that means. Anyway, what kind of accountability would there be for vouchers as opposed to putting the money in the public schools?
Okay, I can address a couple of things here. In the last election, don't know what's happening this election, but Howard Rich, who's up in New York, is very much in favor of privatizing education. Understand, I am 100% for public education. I don't want to see one nickel go away from public education until we fully address public education. Then maybe we can talk about it, but we're not there yet. Now, what happened was Howard Rich sent down in $1,000 increments through various people, through his LLCs and that type of thing, money to my opponent. And there were others in the legislature who received that money. I would not take that money because I don't support vouchers. Now, there was a bill in the spring of the year that was going to give a $4,000, I hope I do this right, for tax deduction. And when you really look at our 7% interest income tax rate, that was 7% of $4,000, that's $280 that people were going to be given to send their children to private school. Now, no one can send their child to private school on that small amount of money. But the bigger issue, I think, is that it took $31 million, it would have taken $31 million out of public education. And my opponent did support that bill, and thank you, Senate, stopped that right in its tracks. So this issue of vouchers is big. Now, I am for school choice in terms of charter schools, our public schools, and within the public school system, we can have a variety of programs, and Dr. Nancy McGinley is doing a great job with diversifying the schools. We got the School of the Arts, we got Garrett. You know, do we need more? Yes. We have the Academic Magnet High School. Wando is a big school, big high school, but they have a lot of vocational technical programs within their school. When little St. Andrews Elementary was losing student population, they reinvented themselves into a math and science school. So I think there are lots of possibilities right now. There's a big discussion going on to help Murray-LaSagne become a Montessori school, and that would provide an alternative to the residents of James Island, and then if it became a Montessori school, I believe it would also allow people from across the district to participate. I think that answers the question.
While we're talking about education, how do you feel about incorporating apprentice programs into high schools?
I am absolutely for apprenticeship programs. I think that students learn well on the job, and the apprenticeships can be in a variety of ways. I mean, I think we automatically think of bricklayers, welders, auto mechanics, but it could be an apprenticeship with an artist, or it could be an apprenticeship with somebody in technology. But I think those life experiences are really important. Now, the kicker in it is that as a school, you've got to support students with their apprenticeships, transportation. You're talking about them getting off campus, so transportation is an issue, and supervision, guidance for them. I think it's important. And I want to speak to this too. I'm thinking of apprenticeships for our students who are special ed. I have a nephew who is special ed, and I just know that if he had an apprenticeship when he was in high school, he would have a better time getting a job today, because that practical experience is critical for all kinds of students.
Okay, continuing with education then. What are your thoughts on the use of state lottery monies for education in college level or the use in the elementary school level?
Okay. Well, our lottery, and I'm sorry, I don't know the total amount, but I'll give you kind of an example. I think the lottery funds are going well with supporting scholarships for the older students, but I can tell you that not much is going through to K through 12. In fact, the lottery money only really supports K through 5. And put this in perspective. when I was working with the school district, we got approximately $1.5 million in lottery money for students in grades K through 5. So we're talking about maybe 25,000 students. $1.5 million just doesn't go very far. So while we think that the lottery is really supporting education, it is supporting scholarships, it is supporting endowed chairs at the university level, but in terms of K through 5 is the only range of our K through 12 program that's getting any money, and it's minimal. It's really minimal.